I really believe that this is the biggest issue of our time. That, social media, the fact that we live more isolated from our friends, we're lacking community. All of this comes together, and people are feeling lost and empty. A few years ago, I set myself a challenge. I was trying to learn to produce a new genre of music. I was really getting into organic house. And up until that point, all of my attempts at writing that style weren't very good. I didn't really feel like I was capturing the authentic kind of tone and nature of that kind of music. So I came up with this idea to write 100 demos in 10 days as a way of me practicing, really refining that process to try and get closer to the sound that I was looking for. And in the process of it, there was a breakthrough that I would say has been one of the most important learnings from my entire life, probably. It's really changed the way that I approach all of my work, and it's given me insight into the creative practice, but also the way that we live in general. So I'm going to share that with you, and I'm continuing to learn about this, so I'm going to share with you as much as I can about the way it works, and how we can tap into this more readily. So yeah, 100 tracks, 100 demos in 10 days, and then the idea was that I would refine those 100 demos down to 10 final tracks and create an album, which I did. The process was pretty painful. Particularly, after the first 2 days, I reached a point where I ran out of ideas, pretty much. Up until that point, I had all these preconceived notions of what I wanted to create, and very often that would be inspired by the work of other artists, or there'd be like little glimpses and ideas of things that I wanted to try. But after, say, 20 of those, I ran out of ideas, and I sat there really struggling to think of, what else I could try, what else I could do next. And what I had to do was slow right down and stop trying to force my ideas onto my music. Now, like I said, this is a real big turning point for me, because what I would do in that situation was I would listen to the loop, or the bit that I was working on, and I would just wait until the one obvious next step occurred to me. So maybe I was writing a melody, and I'd be playing the part that I had so far, and I'd just be listening to it, and then perhaps one single note might pop up in my awareness somewhere within that melody, and so I would just add in or write that one note, play it on the piano or whatever. And so I started just going along, waiting for that one next step. Now, I think part of it is because I was doing 100 demos, there wasn't really much pressure on any of them being particularly perfect. I think if I had been trying to approach this normally, I wouldn't have allowed myself to let go of the reins in that way, because, when you're working on a piece of music for hours and you want it to be great, you have a lot of invested in it, you're trying to control everything, okay? Whereas in this situation, because I was doing 100, in that moment after 20, I was probably a little bit lazy, actually. It was like, well, I can't think of anything. And so I'm kind of going to give up a little bit and just go with whatever comes to me, okay? But the crazy thing is that while I slowed down and just followed that one next step over and over again, it took me to some creative places that I never ever would have achieved going through my normal thought process. It really took me to explore really unusual and unique sounds in the process, and I had some amazing music come out of it. I was really proud of that album at the time. Finished it as a 10-track album, And it really got things moving for me again in terms of my music. I hadn't released a huge amount for quite a few years before that, and since then I've been, reasonably prolific in comparison. And that approach has stuck with me through all other aspects of my work. My background is in advertising, and so from time to time I still do some design jobs. And to start with, very often I will default down my usual routes and my usual approach. But if I ever find myself where I'm struggling to come up with an idea, or hopefully if I can catch myself sooner, I will try and flip back into this mindset of just waiting and doing the obvious next step. And invariably, I will find myself very quickly at a really strong idea that has a lot of detail and is well considered, and I have a lot of faith in because it looks good and it feels good, and I trust this intuition that comes up now. But there is always that resistance at the start, and I think that this is the truth for any artist. When you first begin, when you're staring at that blank page, there is anxiety, there's uncertainty, there's the unknowing of what might come or what might not come. And so in that anxiety and that uncertainty, we default to trying to control things as much as we can. And so we follow our tried and tested routes and our patterns and do the obvious thing that we would have normally done. And we don't allow the space to receive deeper intuition, divine guidance, whatever you want to call it. And this approach goes beyond creativity as well. As I said, these videos, when I first started recording these videos, I would very often script everything out. I would write it in as much coherent detail as I could, try and make it really succinct, get all the information in there. And I'd use a teleprompter and I would read it. And now, very often, I will either press record and I'll sit here quietly until I get this little bubbling up sense of what wants to be said, or sometimes I will already have that sense and I'll be walking around minding my own business, and I can feel there's just something that's kind of eating away at me a little bit that wants to be formed, and it'll kind of dance around a little bit in the background for me. And I will do my best to act on that quickly when that comes, because there's an energy there that wants to be expressed. And if I don't act on it quickly, then I'll struggle to have that flow and speak freely if I come back to that later. So this is all intuition, if you will. The other way that I've been thinking about it is it's a receptive mode of being. And I think all artists have access to this very readily. Our culture is less open and willing to be in this place because it doesn't feel like work. Because the opposite is this more active, like forward-facing, productive, like logical mode of being. And I believe that we're meant to be able to flow back and forth between the two. The other way that I see it, and I've said about this in recent videos as well, is it's like the receptive thing is a broad awareness. It's an ability to look at everything that's around us, to be able to integrate and combine, make patterns, synthesize all that information. And through the process, it tells us what's the most important thing to focus on. So that you have this receptive mode, which is taking in all the available information, finding a way to combine it in the most productive way. And then suddenly you have real clear and succinct direction on where you should be putting your energy. And then we can move into that focused and active mode where we can go and get it done. A lot of people in our culture who are, entrepreneurs, hustle culture, all this kind of thing, is focused on the active and the doing. And you can create success there, but very often it's success without a deeper level of meaning, because it's kind of throwing everything at the wall and seeing what sticks, right? Rather than actually paying attention to what is the really most important thing in the first place. It's just try, be successful, without an underlying reason why. Whereas when we spend the time and get quiet and tune into that wider awareness, it's almost as if we get the bigger picture. And from that bigger picture, we can then identify what is the most needed thing that we can do. How can we contribute in the most meaningful way? You know, I think it's really sad that a lot of people who are working with the goal first and foremost to make as much money as possible without having that underlying connection to purpose or deeper meaning, what they're really doing is they are betting on the fact that they will be able to buy that feeling in the future. You know, I think what all of us deep down are really wanting is a life that feels meaningful, like we've done something worthwhile. And a big part of that actually comes from emotion. I think part of this awareness is emotion based as well. You know, things that feel meaningful for us, we have to be emotionally invested in, and that generally involves other people as well. You know, when we can see how our actions are improving the lives of others, that's what gives a sense of purpose, because we can see that we're needed. Other people need us. And likewise, when we see other people who care about us and have our best interests and are looking out for us, that's how we feel connected. And I really believe that this is the biggest issue of our time. That, you know, social media, the fact that we live more isolated from our friends, we're lacking community, all of this comes together, and people are feeling lost and empty. And because they're feeling lost and empty, we are going into this kind of survival mode where we're prioritizing our own self-survival and our self-interest, and we're hoarding and we're trying to, you know, buy better stuff and all this thing to make ourselves feel worthy, when actually what we're really seeking is that deeper meaning and deeper connection, and we're running away from it. I've digressed a little bit on that from where I was planning to go. I thought we were going to stick into the creative thing, but this is all connected. You know, this is meant to be a flow where we go from the awareness, synthesize that, and then focus. In fact, you can tell when I'm speaking, particularly in my older videos, you can tell how I flow between these two states. When I am really in the receptive and aware place, my speaking slows down, and the words that come, they come on their own. They come to me. The more sensible words that explain what I'm trying to get across, they come on their own. And then my conscious mind, my ego, grabs onto those threads, and then very often my speaking will speed up, because I get the idea of what the message is, and I will run with it and try and put it across in the least amount of effort, I suppose. So we're all shuttling back and forth, hopefully, between these two, but this lower part gets very ignored in our culture, and we can train our intuition, we can train this part of ourselves, because, as I said, this is what gives the focus. Tells us what's important. Now, if you don't feel that you have much connection to your intuition, and you've never even thought about it in this way, maybe you don't think you're creative, anything like that, I've got a practice that you can try that will allow you to tap into this awareness. I almost guarantee that you will get something out of this. However, it might be uncomfortable, and particularly if you have you know, any underlying traumas or any conditions, something like ADHD or anything like that, that I also think are symptoms of some of these issues in modern culture that we're dealing with at the moment. But that might make this really challenging for you. However, I really do recommend that you give it a go and see if you can sit with this, because, as I say, once you start getting a sense of what it feels like to get those insights, then you can practice that all the time, and you can refine and refine and refine. And it alleviates so much of the anxiety once you start really hearing it, because it's like, well, rather than trying to control everything and run around and have to force yourself to make everything safe, suddenly you just get real clarity on, well, this is the one thing that I should be doing, rather than all of those bits. Focus my attention on this one thing. So the practice is to sit in silence for an hour. That's it. And it's probably going to be very uncomfortable if you've never done it before. And this is not meditating. It's not trying to do anything. The only thing actually that you're trying to do is relax. So don't let your mind run away aimlessly, but also, as I said, you're not meditating. Try and just relax. Sit on your sofa. Make sure your phone is nowhere near you, and just see what happens for an hour. First time I did this, it was uncomfortable, and probably 40 minutes I was pretty distracted, and I just kept trying to relax. And in the last 15-20 minutes, I had all these insights and thoughts arising, and it really gave me so much clarity on a project that I was working on and something that I wanted to do, and it opened up a huge amount for me. Now, again, this is one of the core issues of modern culture, where we feel very uncomfortable sitting quietly with ourselves. But this is where we get those insights. This is where we discover what is the best use of our time, what our purpose is. If you sit there and you sit in total silence and you wait with, maybe you set yourself a question before, that's a good idea. You could set yourself a question of, what is the best contribution that I could make today or this week? And then just sit there and relax and see what happens. And I am confident that you will get an answer. And if you do, I would love to hear what you got. So make sure you leave a note in the comments. I'm going to stop talking now, but thanks for watching, and let me know what you thought. And if you have anything else that you'd like me to talk about, then let me know as well. Thanks. I'll see you soon.